Alright guys, welcome back to God's Country Shooting and Outdoors. I am not feeling very well today, so I took a sick day, but I figured I would try to at least do a little something. So today we are going to start with just how I set a scope up, how I mount a scope and get it going. So this is the Mossberg 7mm PRC Patriot Edition. I'll try to be as quick as I can. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the gun out. Then I'm going to check the base mount, make sure that the base is tight, make sure all the screws are tight to the base. Once I do that, you can't really see it. I actually try to keep the gun somewhat level this way, just make it easier to work on. I use the bipods down here under the bipods. What I will do is these little scope levels, you can get them on Amazon. They actually work pretty good. Pack of 4 for like $8. So I want to get my bipods however I need to get this to where the gun is pretty well level crossways. So I'm going to check for level, make sure that it's level crossways. Once I do that, and you don't have to do that first thing, it's just something I usually go ahead and do and watch it while I'm working. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and set my mounts where I think I'm going to need them. Not really tight, but enough to get my scope started. The whole time I'm kind of watching that I do this. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm actually kind of watching the level of the gun. I might have to touch it up just a little bit here and there. For the most part, it should be pretty close the whole time. It is pretty important to get the gun level because you never know when and if you're going to be shooting longer distances. And if you're going to shoot any kind of longer distances, the gun's got to be level. So make sure that you do your best to get that gun as level as possible. A lot of people are picky about their bases, or I typically, if it's a base that has the set screw or the little bolt type on the outside, I usually put it to my left hand side just because to me it kind of feels like it gets in the way. Different people do it different ways, but that's just how I do it. One of the things that I like to do, and some companies do this, is inside of the ring, right here in the, I don't know if you can see that or not, but inside of the ring, top and bottom, they'll put a little bit of a adhesive tape. Not that it's adhesive to the scope, but it acts as a little bit of a separation, a cushion between metal on metal. If it doesn't have that, this is something I've done for years, is cut a little piece of electrical tape, just enough to kind of put inside the bottom and the top. Doesn't take a whole lot, but that way you allow just a little bit of a cushion between your rings and the metal of the scope. This scope is the 6-hour. I'm setting this gun up not necessarily for long range, but for hunting. I don't feel comfortable shooting exceptionally long ranges for hunting. So this gun's set up to shoot about 500 yards, which is plenty enough for me. And this gun will definitely do a whole lot more than that, but this is what I wanted. So this is a 6-hour 3x12x44. I may have to adjust my rings a little bit here and there, but I will go ahead and start with adjusting the rings to the scope. I may have to move one forward or one forward this way, one back, to kind of give myself the eye relief that I need. It's kind of looking like this ring here might have to slide back a notch to kind of give me the eye relief I need, or vice versa. But I will go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, so I have the gun pre-fit to my eye length. So what I did was I just had the scope semi-set in place. to where I could, the screws weren't overly tightened, just enough to be able to hold things kind of neatly in place. And then I worked my eye relief from like laying down, from bench, from prone, and just kind of get a feel for how that scope lines up with me on the gun. So once I've got that done, the next thing I'm going to do is come back here to make sure that my level on the base is level. I'm also going to check the level. I have two of them. One of them I'll keep on the gun on the bases, or on the base mount, and one on the actual turret of the scope, to make sure that they're both staying in the same level. Once I've done that, and I've got the gun or the scope kind of pre-fitted to the gun and to me, the next thing I usually do, and I've already got this done, is I go ahead, it's close, pull one screw out at a time and put a little bit of Loctite on it and put it back in, not all the way tight, but tight enough to just kind of, like I say, hold it. Two things, or one thing for sure. The first thing was the Loctite. Make sure everything's Loctite good. Make sure everything's good and torqued. Secondly, when your tightness scoped down and you get to this point where the gun is level, the scope is level, the eye relief is set to you right, you feel comfortable with the way the gun is set together. As you begin to tighten these screws up for the final tightening, make sure that the distance between your base mounts or your rings are equally the same on both sides, because if they're not, when you go to torque that scope down, you can actually torque the scope and get it kind of in a bind. So you want to try to keep that gap on both sides as equal as you possibly can. Typically what I do, once I get that kind of close, and I usually use these, but I grabbed the wrong one a minute ago, so we're going to use the factory Allen wrench to get us going, is I usually go about one turn or 3/4 of a turn, then go to the other side of the scope, 3/4 of a turn, kind of like what you do on your tires, how you do a star lug pattern, you go one, then down to the bottom and get one beside that, and then come back up across, working your way around in a star pattern. So once I've done that, I come back around and just kind of easily go 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn, front and back, watching the whole time. I'm kind of watching both of my levels to make sure that I'm staying level, but I'm also not over torquing the scope. When you get down to your final level, or to your final little bit of torquing, the screws, you can kind of torque the side that's a little bit further apart than the other if you need to kind of bring it in. But I just try to work my way around easily at all of the screws, tighten it down, and the closer I get to tighten, the less I try to force it. Sometimes you can just pull one side just a little bit more than the other, but for the most part, that's what you're going to do. So you're going to finish by just torquing it down. I don't have a torque wrench to be able to set the poundage on these. I just go to where it's tight plus about 1/4 to 1/2 a turn. That feels comfortable, but your own strength better than I do. When it's all said and done, when I do my final check on this, both of my levels are right. The gun fits me the way I want it to. The gap between each side of the bases are good. The scope is level. It should be good to go. That's just a quick overview on how I mount a scope. Everybody's a little bit different, but the base way you do it is pretty much the same. It's got to fit you. The crosshairs has to be straight. Eye relief has to be good, and the more level that you can get it, the better it is. Again, torquing that base plate down, or base mount down, and getting your rings tight, some good Loctite or something on them is definitely the way to go, especially if you're not planning on changing the scopes around. Even if you are, most of the time with these detachable rings, you can just take the rings off, and most of the time they'll lock back down on another base plate or Picatinny rail like this. Pretty much the same, so that you don't have to worry too much about whether your scope is perfect. But most of the time, these rails or these bases are about 3/8 to a ½ inch difference. So most of the time, I mean, if you're a typical hunter, ½ inch isn't going to be a real big deal, because you may have more clothes or less clothes on, so you kind of get that feel for needing to move that gun a little bit anyways. But if I wanted to drop this scope on another gun, I shouldn't really have to change taking the rings completely off. I should be able, as long as that base is pretty much the same, I should be able to just kind of set that base or this scope on another set of bases and be pretty close. Just move it back and forth on the base a little bit. Anyways, I hope this helps you. Maybe we do another video another day on how I bore sight. I do like to use both the level and the bore sighter to check myself, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, hopefully we will be getting this rifle out to the range. There's plenty of reviews and stuff on the Mossberg rifles out there, especially in the 7mm PRC. I'm really hoping that this one does well. I'm definitely setting this gun up for hunting. This is the Buckmaster, so it's got the drop crosshairs in it out to 500 yards. So we're going to play with that and see how that goes. Lord willing, we'll get this to the range soon. Until next time, remember, love God, love your family, love guns, love your country. These are important things and important times. Be a witness, be a light. If you're not saved, boy, I'd sure like to help you find the Lord. Take care.